Breaking news! The Eagles' 2025 offseason has been a whirlwind. Super Bowl champions, major free agency moves, and now a draft class that could define the future. But are the Birds making the right moves to stay on top? Stick around, because this may not be the flashy draft you were hoping for, but it could be the one that keeps Philly dominant for years to come. I'll tell you everything I know so far. But first, make sure you've already hit that like button, but only do so if the Philadelphia Eagles are close to your heart. If possible, write something like this: Go Eagles! My heart bleeds green and white. Let's start with pick 32. You were probably expecting a dynamic player, right? Maybe a wide receiver, a corner, or even a linebacker. But Howie Roseman stuck to what he does best, building in the trenches. The Eagles selected Gray Zabel, an offensive lineman from North Dakota State. Now, before you roll your eyes, let's talk about why this pick makes perfect sense. Philly's dominance over the years? It starts with the offensive line. Jason Kelce is gone. Lane Johnson is still elite, but he's not getting any younger. Depth matters. And Zabel? He's versatile. He can play guard, center, and even swing tackle if needed. Last season, he played 970 snaps at left tackle with just 1 sack allowed, a 93.1 pass blocking grade. That's dominant. The Eagles aren't thinking short-term. They're thinking long-term sustainability. Now, moving into round 2, pick 64. Edge rusher. You lose Josh Sweat. Brandon Graham, a Philly legend, retires. How do you reload? The Eagles bring in Josiah Stewart from Michigan. And look, this guy has been productive everywhere. Coastal Carolina, 12.5 sacks as a freshman. Michigan, 8.5 sacks last year. The dude gets pressure, 37 pressures last season alone. He's explosive, plays with a high motor, and fits what the Eagles love in a defensive lineman. Pair him with Haason Reddick and Nolan Smith, and you've got a serious rotation that could wreak havoc. Round 3, pick 96, and we finally get to the secondary. If you watched the Eagles last season, you know the defense needed help. They trade away C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So what's the move? Kevin Winston, safety out of Penn State. He's got size, speed, and the kind of physicality you love in an Eagles safety. The only concern? He missed part of 2024 with an ACL injury. But in today's NFL, players bounce back from that quickly. When healthy, he's been compared to Derwin James, an athletic freak who can lay the wood and make plays in coverage. Philly has done well developing secondary talent. Could Winston be the next star? Let's move to day 3, where Howie Roseman always works his magic. 4th round pick, Riley Mills, defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. Another trench pick. Another guy who can play multiple spots. 7.5 sacks last season, 34 pressures. Philly is loading up young talent on that D-line to make sure they stay dominant. Vic Fangio will have another versatile piece to move around. Then comes the tight end position. This one's interesting. Dallas Goedert could be gone next season, so Philly does its homework and drafts Thomas Fidone out of Nebraska. This guy is a freak athlete, 6 feet 5 inches, 243 pounds, ran a 4.7 40-yard dash. He's explosive, has great hands, and could be the next homegrown tight end Philly develops into a star. And then the later picks, Denzel Burke, cornerback out of Ohio State. A ton of experience, played in big games, and could be a steal late in the draft. Bahel Tootin, a speedy running back with 4.34 speed. And finally, Seth McLaughlin, a center from Alabama, another offensive line piece for depth. So now the big question, what do you think? Did Howie Roseman nail this draft? Would you have gone in a different direction? Let's hear your takes down in the comments. This draft might not be the one that gets fans jumping out of their seats, but if you really know football, if you understand what makes the Eagles one of the most consistent teams in the NFL, then you see the vision here. Howie Roseman isn't just trying to run it back for one more year. He's making sure this team is staying power. Let's talk about strategy. This draft class is about 2 things: protecting the quarterback and getting after the quarterback. The Eagles just won a Super Bowl because they dominated in the trenches, and Howie knows you don't stay on top by chasing headlines, you stay on top by winning up front. Think about the offensive line. Jason Kelce is gone. Lane Johnson has a few years left. Cam Jurgens is stepping up. But beyond that, depth was a concern. That's why the Gray Zabel pick makes sense. He's not a flashy name, but he's a plug-and-play guy who could be a future anchor on this line. And let's be real, Jeff Stoutland turns good offensive linemen into all-pros. Imagine what he can do with Zabel. On defense, the Eagles went younger and cheaper on the edge after losing Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham. But let's not overlook the additions of Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche. Both were brought in for under $6 million combined in 2025. That's incredible value. Now, add Josiah Stewart to that mix, a young pass rusher with a relentless motor who can run behind guys like Haason Reddick and Nolan Smith. This isn't just a stopgap. This is a long-term investment in keeping the defensive front lethal. And the Kevin Winston pick? It's the definition of high risk, high reward. If that ACL injury is behind him, you've got a player who can be a game changer in the secondary. A true enforcer with range, speed, and a nose for the football. Pair him with Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown, and you've got a young, aggressive safety room. Then there's Riley Mills. This pick is more about planning for the future. Jalen Carter is a stud. Jordan Davis is a monster in the middle, but Milton Williams left in free agency, and Moro Ojomo might get paid in 2 years. Mills has versatility. He can play inside or out, and that's exactly what Vic Fangio wants in his defense. He's got a non-stop motor, and that's the kind of player Eagles fans fall in love with. And what about Thomas Fidone? A tight end picked this early tells you what you already suspected. Dallas Goedert's time in Philly might be coming to an end. Goddard is still productive, but the Eagles are looking ahead. Fidone is big, fast, and athletic. He could be the next guy in line to take over at the position. Then you have those late-round gems. Denzel Burke, tons of experience at Ohio State, physical, plays with confidence. He might not be a day-one starter, but he could turn into a really solid contributor. Bahel Tootin, pure speed. If you're looking for a home run hitter in the backfield, this is your guy. And Seth McLaughlin, a center from Alabama? We've seen this story before, and it usually ends well for the Eagles. So, the real question is, did Howie Roseman just quietly build another powerhouse roster? The flashy picks weren't there. No big-name skill players. No first-round corner or linebacker. But if you know football, you see what's happening here. The Eagles are doubling down on their identity, winning in the trenches, drafting smart, and setting themselves up for sustained success. But now it's your turn. What do you think? Did Howie get it right, or did he miss out on some key players? Would you have gone for a wide receiver? A top-tier corner? Maybe a different safety? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And let's be honest, this draft might not have the sizzle of taking a star wide receiver or trading up for a big-name corner. But if there's one thing Eagles fans should know by now, it's that Howie Roseman isn't playing checkers. He's playing chess. Look at the past few years. The Eagles have built a roster that can sustain injuries, reload talent, and adapt on the fly. That's why they've been in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. That's why they just lifted the Lombardi again. And that's exactly why this draft was built the way it was. Gray Zabel at 32? That's not about just next season. It's about making sure this offensive line doesn't take a step back when Lane Johnson eventually calls it a career. Josiah Stewart? He's here because the Eagles know that even with a deep edge rotation, you can never have enough pass rushers. Kevin Winston? He's a gamble, sure, but if he stays healthy, he could be one of the best steals of this draft class. And here's something to think about. Every single one of these guys fits what the Eagles do. Howie Roseman isn't just drafting names. He's drafting players that match the system, that fit the culture, and that can step in without skipping a beat. You think Vic Fangio didn't sign off on Riley Mills? You think Jeff Stoutland didn't take one look at Zabel and say, yeah, I can work with that? This front office doesn't just throw darts at a board. There's a reason they win, and it's because they make moves like this. But let's zoom out for a second. How does this draft stack up against the rest of the NFC? The Cowboys? They still have major O-line questions, and if they can't protect Dak, they're in trouble. And if you love this kind of deep dive, don't forget, this is the spot for all things Eagles. The season might be months away, but we're covering everything: free agency moves, training camp battles, preseason standouts. You don't want to miss it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, fly Eagles fly.